It's another Late Nights with Warm Whiskey. Tom here, back at it again. Tonight we're going to do a review of the new Davis County Double Barrel Straight Kentucky Bourbon Whiskey. So if any of you out there are not familiar with the Davis County line, it is a historic brand that is being revamped and revitalized by Luxrow out of Bardstown, Kentucky, which is now part of MGP, which now changed their name to Squib and something else. That's a whole nother ball of wax for another point in time. But for now, we're going to focus on this latest release of the Davis County line. Last year, 2020, I think, came about the height of the pandemic. The Davis County line did hit, but I don't think it got the attention it deserved. People were out hunting toilet paper and hand sanitizer. And it is a line that is worth visiting. It takes a traditional wheated bourbon mash bill, a rye mash bill, blends them together to bring you the best of both worlds. So they had 3 offerings that were released when this line launched. There was the standard blue label, and then there were 2 finished whiskeys along with the standard. There was a French oak finished, and then there was a cab finish. And now we have the latest release, which is their Double Barrel Straight Kentucky Bourbon Whiskey, which goes through a secondary finishing process in Missouri white oak barrels with toasted heads. So there's toasted oak and a number 2 char on some Missouri white oak. So if any of you do not know, that's where the majority of the oak that makes the barrels of most of the bourbon that we are drinking today is coming from Missouri. So I already have a little bit of this Davis County Double Barrel poured into my Glencairn. Actually was able to try a little bit of this at work today, but you know, little sample plastic cups don't give you the best sense of its aroma. Not a good presentation for getting that full bouquet that you want to get from your whiskey. So I'm going to dive in, see what the nose tells us. Definitely some really nice apples, caramel, chocolate. There's a nice oakiness on the nose of this as well too. That's doing very well. Some really nice legs. All of the Davis County lines are bottled at 96 proof, so it's very respectable. It's not watered down. That's a nice little sweet spot. Not too hot, not too weak. Nice balance right there in that, 90, 92 to 100 proof is a really good range for a lot of different whiskeys for me. Of course, I do appreciate and enjoy barrel proof whiskeys, but there's a place and time for those, and there's a place and time for just having a glass or 2 of something that isn't going to get you that schmuckered up. Really enjoying the nose on this, so I'm going to dive right in and let's see what arrives on the old palate. there's definitely a nice balance being struck between the influence of that toasted oak and then a secondary fresh round of the lightly charred. It's number 2 char, that Missouri white oak. So there's that depth and caramel and chocolate that you're going to get from that toasted barrel finish, but there's also a nice little tannic punch coming from that secondary lightly charred white oak. Nice medium finish, not too long, but I'd wager to say this is straight Kentucky, bourbon whiskey that's finished. We're probably right around that 6-year mark with this, maybe. There's no age statement on it. Let's see what the back of the label tells us. Whether you're shouldering an over, under, or a side by side, 2 barrels are always better than one. This bourbon celebrates the time-honored tradition of duck hunting and the camaraderie that follows. We're proud to partner with Ducks Unlimited for this unique offering. So yes, this actually does bear the Ducks Unlimited little duck head there. It's a interesting collaboration, and it's a cool thing to support. Ducks Unlimited is committed to preserving wetlands and marshes and making sure the places where these waterfowl live in their habitats and making sure that it's preserved. So that's a damn good cause, in my opinion, and a damn good bourbon. Really nice little spice on this with that apple, chocolate, caramel, oak spice. Rhymes really well. Really balanced on the palate, between, like I said, those toasted oak elements along with that nice little punchy tannic kick from that fresh oak. Really appreciate this. I've got a lot of whiskeys to get to, and it's been a minute since I have done a video. Just a little bit back, I had to take a pause. I took a trip down to Kentucky to Bardstown. Big shout out to the Talbot and Deetra, the lovely bartender, and she runs the bar there, and always have a great time in Bardstown, Kentucky. Trip was somewhat odd, really different. We went down knowing that we were going to be able to pick a barrel of Elijah Craig barrel proof. That was the whole point. We've had this trip planned and scheduled for quite some time. But lo and behold, the week before we are scheduled to go, the week of the Kentucky Bourbon Festival in Bardstown, Heaven Hill's workers went on strike. And so at the last minute, our pick was canceled, and we had a group of guys all ready to go. Everybody made accommodations, took time off of work. So at that point in time, we're like, well, we'll just head down there and have some fun, drink and shop and, hunt some bourbon, have a good time. And I reached out to some of my other reps just to see if there were any other places where I might be able to get a barrel while we were down there. And, that was met to, the chirping sound of crickets. None of them were able to get back with me. I mean, it was short notice, and, these barrel pick programs are pretty popular and they get booked up pretty fast. But you never know if there's a cancellation or might be a slot where we could be accommodated. Unfortunately, that didn't pan out, but fortunately, so happens, we hired a cab to drive us around on the Tuesday that we were going to actually do the pick. And we were just going to go from distillery to distillery and hit every liquor store around, do some shopping, get some lunch. But our lovely cab driver, Donna, her sister Dina, is the manager of Preservation Distillery. So she said something and said, well, maybe I can call my sister and see what can happen. Maybe you can at least go in and do a tasting. Who knows? But turns out the fine folks at the Preservation Distillery are just awesome. They were actually closed. They had an employee appreciation day, and they were having a party. It's following the big bourbon festival, so she was like, "Oh, we were like, oh, well, maybe tomorrow, because we were still going to be in town the next day, scheduled to leave. I think all our hotels were booked, but we checked out that Wednesday, and we stop and go to, I believe, Lux Row, and by the time we get out of Lux Row, I think she disappeared on us, but came back, and then we got in the cab, and she's like, well, my sister said she's going to go down, and you guys can go down to Preservation Distillery, and she'll open up the gift shop for you. So, like, I don't know if you're going to be able to taste or do anything. We're like, oh, that's awesome. Let's go there and do this. They have if anybody's not familiar, Preservation Distillery has tie-ins to the old St. Nick line of whiskeys. That's a line of whiskeys, I think, that's been around since the late 80s. It was always select lots of barrels of bourbon that were procured and bottled for the overseas market, the Asian market, and European markets, because bourbon at that time was not very popular here in the States. So we get there. Big bearded guy says, oh, you guys got to go. We're closed. We're like, oh, Dina invited us to come down to the gift shop. So we were greeted by Dina, Mary, the lady who does all of the labels by hand. And big bearded guy, Matthew, turns out to be their master distiller. And we go in and they proceed to start giving us samples of pretty much quite a lot of their full line. They do Rare Perfection. They have at Waddy Boone & Sons. And then she was able to get a hold of Scott, their, I believe, brand manager, who is in control of doing their barrel picks and some of the programs they have. And turns out we were able to get a barrel of that Waddy Boone & Sons that will be coming at some point. They're not available in the States, so there's some extra hoops that we have to get the ball through to get that barrel into the store. But it should be possible, and it should be coming, because we picked a goddamn good barrel of that Waddy Boone & Sons, which is a unique whiskey that goes through its own kind of process. They take used barrels, strip them down, clean, sand off all the char, put them back together, re-fire them, re-char the barrels, and then put a distillate. I believe it's a bourbon mash bill from an undisclosed Tennessee distillery, and then those are aged, I believe, most of them 7 to 9 years in those used barrels. So when you use a used barrel that is recharred, that first use, all that tannic and the punchy bitter qualities that come from that oak have pretty much been depleted, and you re-char it, and it ends up being somewhat quite like a toasted barrel finished whiskey. So it was an amazing time, an amazing experience. All the guys that we went with, everybody, I think, had a blast. It was a great time, and if you're ever at Bardstown, Kentucky, definitely check out Preservation Distillery. Check out the fine folks at the Talbot Inn. There's a lot of other places I should be mentioning. I love Bardstown. It's a nice little small town, and there's plenty of distilleries surrounding you. And with that said, that's a little update. I ate and drank way too much when I was in Kentucky, so I think I needed to take a little pause, and I took a little pause leading up before the trip and then a little pause after the trip. So, preparing yourself, a little self-care is something everybody should always bear in mind. But yeah, we got some racing cars out there. Finally got the maddening noise of the insects to die down late at night here. We're into fall, not really cooling down yet where I'm at, but definitely the symphony of insects has quieted down just a little bit. So, Davis County double barrel finished. Definitely a bottle that everybody should be checking out. And the whole entire line of the Davis County is worth checking out. Hopefully you guys will be able to get this, we'll be able to get this barrel into the store. I'm thinking it's probably going to be about the beginning of the year, sometime before we're able to get that barrel into the store. I have a lot of other barrel picks and whiskeys I need to cover here, and we'll be reviewing them. And now I'm into those months where I can really hunker down and knock these reviews out. So if you guys enjoy it, give me a like, subscribe if you want. Make sure you turn on those notifications so when I do start posting these videos, hopefully on a more frequent basis, you'll be aware of when those hit. I'm going to try to regiment it and have a little bit more strict schedule and timing for all of these. So with that said, hope you guys enjoy this. Hope to be doing more of these here in the future. And on that note, we're going to wrap this up and say, Skål!